Just caught the dang music. Excelente. What's up, my brothers? Welcome to the live stream. Hope you guys are great. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend. Here in Pittsburgh, it's finally springish. It's like 67 degrees. Yesterday was like 70 something. Today it's going to be 70 something. But, you know, next week it's going to go back to 40s, 50s. It's only March, right? It's the beginning of March, so we're not quite there yet for spring, but we're getting there. Great news is that I am leaving for Florida in 14 days or 13 days or something. And then coming back, and then it'll be basically April. So I'm just trying to skip out. I'm ducking out for the rest of the winter. I'm ducking out, bro. I don't want to fucking stay here. It's winter-ish. All right, boys. So a couple things to discuss as we get in here. Again, mastering libido and erections, the sexual function playbook for guys on TRT, all the things I've learned in coaching infused in a playbook, which breaks down not only protocols, but my logic on how to create protocols and adjust protocols. I'll leave that up here. That is now live, livecortex.com. Go get a copy. You'll have it instantly. You'll have it for you. Okay, great. Just got to answer something real quick. Cool. So that's that. Let's talk about failure on long esters. Now, look, this was an important video in my opinion. It was not like a typically formatted video that I do where it's, you know, I edited and stuff like that. It was just kind of me sitting in my office where I explained that sometimes testosterone cypionate is not capable of creating an estrogen, a DHT estrogen balance that is favorable for erection quality. Sometimes it's just not capable of doing that. In other words, I want to make this statement. There are individuals for whom long esters will fail, period. Now, sure, you could manipulate the protocol, bring a hybrid in. That's technically not then a sole long ester protocol. It's long ester with cream or something, or long ester with prop. You could dial in DHT derivatives, AIs, but as it stands in a standalone with just cypionate and HCG, sometimes that's going to fail for people. And the reason it's going to fail is because testosterone cypionate does two things, right? Three things. It provides high systemic testosterone, but moderate DHT. Okay, moderate DHT. This is why cream is so useful for people, because it's the opposite. It creates mid-level systemic T, high DHT, lower end aromatization. Cypionate, high systemic T, moderate DHT, and higher end aromatization. Right? If you're one of those people where that's how it is acting in your body, you will have a failure to dial in on TRT, on testosterone cypionate. And this bothers me because the clinics will only look at numbers and doctors will only look at numbers in those cases and not think, hey, there must be something deeper going on where this person is requiring more DHT and the cypionate is not capable of getting them in the ratio of DHT to estrogen that makes sense for them for sexual function. This is why I even exist, because there's shit the clinics either miss, don't have time for, or they have a very myopic point of view, doctors especially, regarding this, and that's fine. They have a whole lot of other shit in their purview that they've got to focus on. But, guys like me that are out here coaching real men are seeing their shortcomings and having to get in the way. Recognize that sometimes long esters fail. So while the clinics will be, having you spin your wheels, continuing to dose the long esters, well, we'll just give you some Anavar for libido. Like, that's going to work. Or maybe we'll have you take an AI. Well, they're hard to dial in. The answer is just to stop fucking wasting time and move to test cream, honestly, in those cases. So just something for folks to think about. Regarding test cream, let's talk about the DHT surges and the time that it takes to fix erections. If you go on cream and you're in for a week and you're on the right dose ultimately for you, like 3 pumps a day, the 200 milligram stuff on the scrotum with a little bit of HCG, or 5 clicks a day of the 100 milligram stuff on the scrotum with some HCG, and a week goes by and you don't have nocturnals yet, don't do anything. Don't do anything, right? Because though the DHT is going to surge to supraphysiologic levels almost definitely with testosterone cream, there is a lag period of time where at the penile tissue level, the vasculature, the architecture of the vasculature has to be optimized. And that does not happen instantly. So 2 weeks later, then you're going to wake up with an erection. And then you're going to have one in the middle of the night that's like a complete flesh rocket that's just out of control and automatic. And it'd be so rigid. Well, it took 2 weeks, to upregulate the smooth muscle tone and all the intrapenile dynamics that give you erections. So please be patient with that, especially when you're increasing DHT. Do not try to jump ship from that if nothing has happened. Okay. All right, boys, so that's pretty much all I got to say to open it up. So let's get to some questions. If you guys are here, ask them. Ask whatever questions. Just flood the thing with questions so that we have topics to talk about. I'd love to have you guys do that. Brother Master, if I could just choose one, is it best to measure DHT and E2 at the peak and trough? You want to do both. So you're already asking a failing question. You're asking a question that, that I understand reflects that it is inconvenient to, in the case of cream, get labs the morning before application and then a different day, 6 hours after application. I know that's a pain in the ass, but I do it. I have my clients do it. You should do it too, because you need to know. Because if you're not dialed in, like say you're dialed in at nighttime, you have nocturnals, you wake up kind of horny or whatever, and then the moment you apply all day, you can't really get an erection. Something's wrong. Libido dropped, or it's higher, but erection quality dropped. Yeah, it means you blow out of your window during the peak. Don't you want to know why? Specifically, what would tell you why is where estrogen is at the peak. Now, DHT is going to be sky high, especially if you're using cream in this case. But your estrogen might be going to 45, and that just might be above your erection threshold, no matter how much DHT you have. Now, there is no generally applicable. There are generally applicable things, but there are no rules for everybody. It's like some people can have pretty high DHT, and their estrogen threshold is 50 picograms per milliliter, above which then they get ED, or it's 65 or whatever. But for most folks, it's 20 to 30, 35. You know, above 35 is when the erections start failing, even if there's enough DHT for generally everybody. Generally, again, I'm not talking about the exceptions. So if I were you, I'd measure both, dude. I would measure both. You know, I would measure both. I'd measure them both at peak and trough. Now, you could assume if you're using cream, especially, that you have enough DHT and instead not measure it. But your safest bet to be as informed as possible, which is what you want, and why would you not want to be as informed as possible, is to measure both at peak and trough. Generally, the E2 is the E2 zone within a zone of 27 to 32, the peak number. This is an interesting question because this is what I find. I find that zone is usually perfect as long as you have high DHT. Even if you don't, the erections will work. If you don't have like fibrosis or fat deposits from inhibiting DHT or being starved of DHT for a long time, then yes, that works. However, though, again, the reason that there are people that are very loud in the comment sections when I'm anti letting estrogen go wherever the hell it goes, I think that's a ridiculous, irresponsible idea, because not everybody's physiology is the same. It's because some people can push 35, 40, 45 estradiol, and that's where they feel good. And the only explanation for that is their body has like a threshold of E2 below which things do not function correctly. And there's all kinds of dynamics, you know, related to that, like the renin, aldosterone, angiotensin system, where it's like some people below a certain E2 threshold, they cannot hold water. They go into full-blown diuresis, and that just dehydrates them terribly, and they feel like shit. And in those cases, they've got to push somewhat higher estradiol to maintain what I would assume is arginine vasopressin tone and quantity. But they can tolerate it because they're converting enough DHT from their ester or test modality, you know, be it cream or whatever. You know, that's really those are the exceptions, though, not the rule. That's not the mean at all. The mean is people need to be from 20 to 35 picograms per milliliter of estradiol with high DHT. That is, if I look at the data of coaching clients specifically, excluding myself, because that's just an N=1, that's the common trend. And this is a thing that I don't really hear other YouTubers talk about, like give a range in estradiol. I hear a lot of general shit being said, and I'm like, did you just tell me anything? What did you just tell me? Did you tell me anything that's practical? We're talking about, we're working at the brass tacks level. Why the hell give advice that's general? I'll never understand it, dude. I'll never understand it. Dude, I force everybody in life to be specific, including my cat. I'll ask him, speak to me in English, in words, cat, about what's wrong. I'm just joking. All right, what would the test dose, what would the dose equivalent of test E be for 12 milligrams of test C daily? Probably like 11 milligrams. Yeah, I mean, it peaks higher, and it peaks slightly faster and slightly higher, and then troughs slightly faster and slightly lower. So you would need like a slightly less enanthate. What do I usually have for breakfast and dinner? I don't eat breakfast typically. It's been a real long time since, Jill and I have gone out and done breakfast. The season has a lot to do with that. It's like freezing cold, for most of the winter. But in the morning, I have coffee fasted. I do not eat until it's probably about 10 a.m., 11 a.m. And that's usually, it's either leftovers from the night before. So that's usually like rice and some chicken and a vegetable. Or it's just snacks. And my snack is like a water cracker with craisins and like a spinach artichoke dip. Just trying to keep it real foods as much as I can. Or a banana. Then I hit the gym, not fasted, but in a state where I haven't eaten a ton. And because I'm, sufficiently loaded with androgens, I feel like a fucking animal at the gym, even though I haven't really eaten a big meal in 12 plus hours. So I go work out, and then after working out, I come back and eat not a full meal, but possibly some more snacking, a banana, and then again, some real food, like a protein source. Chicken is almost always what it is. Vegetables and a carb, and it's rice, tubers, or rice or tubers. For dinner, though, it's extremely strict and routine, which, I don't know, bothers some people. My girl, thankfully, is understanding and likes the health benefits of being on a routine. So we're pretty routine with it. And it's like either fish, a carb source like rice or potatoes, and a vegetable and some bread, like Texas toast or, those bakeable biscuits. And alternatively, though, it's a chicken breast, a sweet potato, and asparagus. And then alternatively, every now and then we'll do taco night where we just get chicken, like minced chicken meat, like, how you get like the beef stuff for taco, but we just use chicken. And flour tortillas and lettuce and a bunch of vegetables and taco sauce, and sour cream and avocado and whatever. And we make a meal like that. But mostly it's the good, solid, real foods, protein source, carb source, rice, potatoes, and a vegetable. Mixed vegetables, asparagus. That's essentially what we eat most days. And then every third or fourth night we eat pizza. That's the cheat night. It's good for me. I infuse myself with some more calories. I'm a little stronger in the gym. I get a little more sodium. A lot more sodium, and that fucking works for me. I love it. And, you can't be at a boring diet all the time, but as long as you do everything pretty right, you can cheat. We go out and stuff our faces with pizza, dude. We're doing it tonight. Pizza and a beer, bro, and it's going to be glorious. Are there any advantages to switching to daily injections of Test T from Test C? Better troughs, a little estrogen, a little more DHT, potentially. I mean, you're going to have to measure that and see, but they're so comparable that it's not that different. But look, as you move down the ester tree, starting from cypionate, enanthate, prop, cream, the further you move down, the better things get, right? The easier it is to dial in. So, yes, it's going to behoove you if you don't want estrogen to peak significantly, but you've got to figure out your body. Again, some people on that, one of the fail-safe cypionate protocols do extremely well with 70 every fourth day and a very little bit of HCG, like 600-700 IU a week, just split up into daily injections. They peak, then they start troughing, then they re-inject again on day 4, and they stay right in the zone. Erections are great, libido is great. Now, on something like that, for me personally, the sexual function is fucking phenomenal, but I don't feel good. It's not enough androgens to sustain my energy. I'm one of those people that I need to be consistently around 700, and then I feel good enough, preferably 900 to 1,000, and I'm an absolute animal. So 70 over fourth day isn't quite great for energy for me. What's the difference between the effects of Proviron and 20% DHT? Well, it's substantial, right? 20% DHT gel, especially if you're not diluting it with more MCT oil to make it a milligram a drop, which I do suggest you do because it's a lot easier to adjust a protocol when the substrate amount that you're using for one ancillary is less per application. But the difference is that 20% DHT gel, you are applying directly to the scrotum, which is the highest permeability site on your body for androgens, whether it's testosterone or DHT. The DHT part hasn't been studied, but the test part has been studied, and that's been deemed true. So what you get is rapid absorption of that DHT. That's the difference. Secondarily, Proviron is not DHT. It is a synthetically created, chemically manufactured, methylated version of DHT that structurally is similar, molecularly is similar, but does different things. It does agonize the androgen receptors in a way very comparable to DHT, but it also inhibits aromatase enzymes, which DHT does not. And it also has a great affinity for binding to the sex hormone binding globulins, which DHT does, but not to the extent Proviron does. In other words, Proviron is going to reduce your SHBG more than DHT. And you could go test that and run the experiment yourself, and you'll see that that's true. So those are the primary differences. Now, look, for convenience sake, if you could make Proviron work on TRT to get you the extra DHT like effect, like say you're on Cypionate and you're just not getting, this is why Proviron works, because all it does is like take this inferior ester that gives you high systemic T but moderate DHT, which usually doesn't work that well because it's also high systemic aromatization, and you just infuse a little bit of Proviron. That fixes the protocol, you know? So for convenience sake, Proviron is easier than applying DHT gel to your balls. It is easier to just take a pill, right? But sometimes you need the DHT because it's much more of a scalpel. You can dose it very, very surgically. Penile venous leak, possibly from scar tissue or intracavernosal fat deposits. You have been watching our content and studying it. Good on you, because that's exactly what happens when you starve yourself with DHT. Would some cream be applied directly to the penis or scrotum? Scrotum is best, yeah. Now, you could, if you're going to apply anything to the penis in that case, it would be DHT. Either the transdermal DHT itself, or also on SourceList is the source for Andractum, which is like low concentration DHT, but it's still enough DHT. Yep. Still enough, brother. And that, you know, you could apply to the actual organ, because it will give you local DHT. That's what you want. You want local DHT in the endothelium and smooth muscles and stuff. Next, testosterone cycle. Yeah, it'll be 500, but I'm not really interested in doing that. The next cycle I will run will be Anavar. Yeah, it's just going to be Anavar. Yeah, for me, I don't know if I have my physique here. Or at least my like latest physique at my peak. I'm fatter now because it's the winter, ish. Yeah, that's post cycle. That was me at my peak, right? So I have a lot of that mass still, and if I'm chubby now, I'm not chubby like, right, but I have more water weight, more body weight. But if I shed all that off, I'd look pretty much just like that. That's pretty much what I have left over from the cycle. My shoulders are still very big. My pumps in the gym are very, very insane. And, you know, I look like I'm on low level gear, especially with a pump. So I don't really need to right now. I'm just not that interested in doing it, especially because I am extremely dialed in on TRT. You know, now look, I could go do that. I know what to do because I had to figure it out when I went on a cycle last time, which was take aromasin. But I don't feel like taking an aromatase inhibitor at the moment. And I'm not interested in being any bigger because I am still at TRT doses growing. It's just slower. You know, I'm not going to be like a fucking animal, but the cycle helped a lot. You know, you should use cycles to build some keepable mass, and then you maintain it on TRT so long as your training volume supports that. You know, and I mean, people are different with slow twitch, fast twitch, and lightweight, high reps, heavyweight. I'm not different. I need to lift heavy weights to maintain and especially to grow. I need to lift heavy weights. I need to continue to progressively overload. There was this meme on Facebook that I saw, which is it's just generally fucking true. And it said, it's a guy holding up a sign at the gym, and the sign says, "You can't lift heavy and also do more than 12 reps." You know, so if you find yourself being able to push 15 to 20 reps on something, it's probably not the weight that's going to make you grow fastest. Thinking of experimenting and adding a little contrast to my master failsafe. So you're on 98 milligrams a week or so of cypionate and some HCG. Roughly been thinking 5 milligrams probably every third day. I thought enough to break up the steady state for contrast. Yeah, it will be. Yeah, but I mean, it might not be contrast that you need. That failsafe tends to keep estrogen pretty low. So you might need a bump of estrogen. It depends on what's wrong. You know, if you might need more DHT too. If erection quality is failing but estrogen is in range, you need more DHT. If libido is failing and estrogen is in range but on the lower end, but DHT is high, you need more estradiol. So this would work. If estrogen is on the low end and also DHT is kind of lukewarm, you just need everything. You need an infusion of everything. You need some more DHT and you need a little bit more estradiol. Yeah. I mean, as I said, the best way to dial in TRT actually is to get your dose like on the low end to where erections are insane, but libido is crappy. And that only happens in a low estrogen, high DHT state. Like enough DHT state, well, then you'll have raging nocturnals, and erections will be very easy to the touch to get. And psychogenic erections will be easy, and erections for sex will be fine, but your libido is going to be a little meh because estrogen needs to be in the libido-friendly zone. I just talked about that yesterday. Why don't you use protein powder or multivitamin? I'm asking out of curiosity. Because every single goddamn protein powder that I have been able to, that's in the store, which, by the way, is a problem induced by stupid consumers, has a bunch of other shit in it. Can I not just get the amino acids? Does there have to be spironella in it? Or stevia? I don't care. Give me the raw shit. But it's just that consumers have all these wacky ideas. Oh, sugar causes diabetes. No, it doesn't. So I want aspartame or asulfame in my protein powder. Oh, great. A mild neurotoxin. Good job, consumers. You guys are dumb. You're sitting on your fucking ass all day, not going to the goddamn gym and not doing cardio and eating like an asshole. That's why you're in fucking bad health. It's not sugar. So it's those things that make protein powders have too much shit. Also, they get creative. Oh, why don't we throw some pre-workout stuff in here too? Right? Some beta-alanine and some acetyl L-carnitine. I don't want any of that. I want a pure protein powder. That's one of the reasons I don't do it. And I also don't feel like I need it much. Maybe it would benefit me if I had it pre-workout, or generally just a little more protein for my body. But it just hasn't been something I felt like an urgent necessity to do. Also, currently feeling dialed into my PFS protocol. Well, that's great. What are you on again? You're on failsafe. Okay, great. Well, that's good. I mean, if you're feeling dialed in, you're great. If there are no problems, I wouldn't change it. If you have the urge to experiment, just be careful, because that urge can sometimes make you do things that will dial you out. So you have to be careful about that. 12 milligrams. Okay, got it. Yeah, so that's 84, isn't it? A week? Yeah, 125 IU. Okay. And you're running DHT. Okay, great. Well, that's awesome. So then you're good. I mean, this means that the estrogen is fine, but on that lower end dose to get estrogen in range, because especially if you have PFS, you guys over aromatize and underconvert to DHT. You need a little bit more DHT every third day, and that's just fucking amazing. I am so glad that you followed that advice and it's working, dude. That makes me happy inside, man. I was suddenly feeling like shit and ran labs in the new compounding pharmacy. I was using tests, had my total T at half of what my numbers were previously. Probably put 100 milligram per milliliter in the wrong file. 100 milligram per milliliter of what, bro? By the way, ever notice how they'll let estrogen run high crowd act like hormonal women when people disagree with them? Yeah, it's either... Dude, I actually recently thought about this. Like the primary guy was Danny Bossa. And he since stopped making content for them. I don't know. He's just kind of controversial guy. But if you notice, like anytime anyone challenged that dude, he would get pretty aggressive about it. Now, I get aggressive when people challenge me, especially if I have done 10 years of work to prove I'm right about it, then sure, I'm going to be on your ass and whatever. But it could be two things. Like Danny might have been able to tolerate elevated estradiol because he converts a ton to DHT. He is bald. And DHT makes you aggressive like that. It does. Anytime I increase the DHT, I have to carefully channel my energy, conscious of the fact that I'm going to be a little more aggressive. Like I have a girlfriend. She's a female. She is feminine and soft and whatever. And I can be real aggressive sometimes. So I have to learn to channel that. So DHT makes you that way. So, I mean, Danny could have just been fucking loading, had loads of DHT, and that will make you... confrontational too. You know what I mean? It can absolutely do that. At the same time, it could have just been estrogen. Could have just been estrogen. And I think a lot of those folks are that way. I can tell you this. I mean, doing this for a living and doing it for many years, like I can tell a guy, I think at least, is more DHT dominant versus estrogen or a little bit more estrogen dominant. And what you're saying here, I have observed in some of them. I won't name any names, but there's a couple of them that I see when they talk, they just sort of seem a little womany. I'm a bit confused. I read the DHT can suppress the estrogenic activity at gene expression level. At the same time, high DHT cannot compensate the estrogen activity if E2 is too high. Yeah. Yes. Don't be confused. DHT is not an AI. That's all. And like I said, people have an estrogen threshold above which, no matter how much DHT is there, it's going to suppress erectile quality specifically. It also tends to suppress libido too via inhibiting dopamine neurons in the arcuate nucleus of the brain upstream of the hypothalamus. Is something no one talks about, and I don't know why. I guess they just don't know physiology, but yet they're talking about it with some authority on YouTube. I'll never understand that. I would delete my channel if I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about, you know? What the gene expression stuff is, like, estrogen will bind to the receptor in the presence of elevated DHT or lots of DHT, but DHT itself can stop some of that post-receptor gene expression from even happening. So it's like you have the serum estrogen, you have even receptor binding, but that receptor becomes like nullified. The receptor activation becomes nullified by DHT to some extent. Not 100% though. And we don't even know the actual numbers there in terms of percentages. So DHT itself can't stop, you know, erectile dysfunction associated with you crossing your estrogen threshold. You know, we've got thresholds. We've all got thresholds. Our job is to find what that threshold is and not cross it and stay in the tight windows that keep everything good, not just erections, but libido, not just libido, but erections. I mean, you don't want to have the libido says yes, the Johnson says no syndrome. You know, that's estrogen crowding out your DHT. You don't want to have the Johnson says yes, but libido says no syndrome either. And that's DHT crowding out the estradiol. Tight windows, boys. What doses of arginine and citrulline do you recommend if the goal is to improve sexual function? Minor doses. You don't want to push that stuff too high. You know, gram or two of arginine to start is where I would start. And if you want to combine the 2 grams arginine, a gram of citrulline, I mean, they're both ultimately going to end up being more nitric oxide. But the thing you have to be careful of, especially if you're taking tadalafil, even if you're not, is that nitric oxide is going to vasodilate the hell out of your blood vessels to the point where you're going to get lightheaded at the gym and shit like that. So you have to be careful with these things. They can absolutely lower your blood pressure and dilate your blood vessels to the point where you don't feel right. So start low and move your way up to tolerability. Switch from enanthate to cream. Welcome aboard, brother. Started cream AM, so 2 weeks since last injection. Started cream AM and PM 5 days ago. Haven't noticed any positives when I'm having sleep issues. Switch to AM or ride it out. Well, I mean, as you probably know, you still have cypionate, or you still have enanthate in your system. 2 weeks last injection. You know what you have in the system? Like 70% of that enanthate dose is still there. So now you're running with an excessive amount of probably estradiol, potentially an excessive amount of androgens for your body. You might not really tolerate really high androgens, at least for now. If to try to tolerate, you got to move up stepwise slowly, and then you can tolerate it. You don't jump from 100 milligrams TRT to 500 milligram a week cycle. You're gonna have side effects. But if you slowly move your way up, dude, when I was on 500, I slept great. I felt great. I had maybe a tad bit of head pressure. Hematocrit was up there, but not catastrophically high. But I largely felt fine. But in the beginning of TRT with 200, I had some days where I just had this bounding pulse, and I was having insomnia and all kinds of shit. So it's a stepwise thing. Secondarily, though, it is rarely good to have AM and PM doses of cream. You're never getting a trough. And it's going to be pretty hard for you to dial in estrogen that way because you never trough. You're just constantly aromatizing. I mean, so I don't know who gave you that idea, probably the people that suggest that, but I rarely see that work. Yeah, but you've got enanthate still. You got a lot of it still in the system. I don't know what your dose was, but you've got some enanthate in there. It's going to take some time to filter out of the blood. If you look at the half-life, you're looking at 4 weeks, you still have 25% or so of that enanthate in the system. Week 5, it's pretty much negligible. You can proceed to get bloods and see where your steady state is at that point. I hate sweet potatoes, bro. All right, man. All right, bro. like them with butter and sugar, or butter, sugar, cinnamon. I also like them with salt, with a little bit of butter and some salt. But mashed sweet potatoes are even better if you can get them, or mash them yourself. I've had the same issues not joshing around. I do 2 clicks morning now and 1 click at 2 p.m. That's out my sleep. Crank your magnesium to the sky. 1,000 milligrams. Yeah. You're painting over dirt with magnesium there. I mean, you should try to dial in without anything. I even suggest if you're trying to dial in, don't use Cialis. You need to see, man, where the perfect protocol is. Like on my protocol, I do not need any Cialis, right? So it's like I don't take it every day. Like I used to run 5 milligrams a day because the cardiac benefits and all this other shit that pumps in the gym, but I really don't care. But I don't need it. That's how you know you're truly dialed in. So, magnesium's great. Everybody needs it. But you want to try to dial in your protocol so you don't need anything. On 125 milligrams cream daily, great dose. What would help restore the HPTA for a guy with only one functional testicle? I don't know. Yeah, because I mean, even if you took Clomid and blocked the E2 receptor, the estrogen receptors, and therefore started making your own endogenous hormones, you only have one testicle. So I mean, you are short a whole testicle. You have a physical limitation there. So, I mean, I don't know the answer to that. Does anyone know if test prop typically leads to less acne since it leaves your system quicker? Not necessarily, because the acne isn't driven by steady state as much as it is fluctuations, and you can do a lot of fluctuations with that. Now, also, though, acne is driven by the total amount of androgens in the system until you're used to it. After you get used to it, which can take years, you will have a lot less acne. I mean, the sebaceous glands, they just crap out, or there's some physiological explanation for why over time. I mean, there are bodybuilders running grams of gear and have no acne, and they're not using, what's that crap called? It is another DHT blocker that stops, reduces acne. They're not using that stuff. So fluctuations are it, and then total amount is it until you get used to it. Does Cialis lose effectiveness over time? No. No, it couldn't. It couldn't quite do that. Yeah, I mean, it's mechanistic PDE5 inhibition. It does not lose potency. What changes is your hormone levels, and it can tell you, it can make a 20 milligram tablet that used to give you a rager ineffective because you don't have enough DHT or estrogen's too high or both. So that's what I've witnessed over the years. Brother, can you share some of your thoughts on potential anavar cycle length and milligram schedule? Yeah, I think, listen, I'm always going to be, so that you can keep your blood markers in order and so that the recovery is easier after you get off of it, conservative with dosing. I experimented myself and found that 6 milligrams a day was enough to give me noticeable anabolism. I mean, if you go look at the charts on the anabolic potential of anavar versus testosterone, it's like substantial. So it's like dosing, I don't know the number, but say it's like dosing an extra 50 milligrams or 75 milligrams probably of test a week to do like 6 milligrams a day. It's a lot. It's a lot. Like you're going to notice that anabolism, man, and your pumps and your strength and all that stuff. So if I were you, if you're starting from a baseline of healthy HDL and in-range LDL, then you can push 15 to 25 milligrams a day, and you're gonna get massive, quick. The pumps will show up at day 2 or day 3, and you're gonna start retaining mass and building muscle. You run that for 2-3 months, you'll look like a different human being, for sure. If your lipids are not in order, though, that's where you would want to modestly go in dosing, like 6 milligrams a day, 5 milligrams a day, 11 milligrams a day, something like that. And you're going to notice the anabolism even then, so still, but it won't skew your lipids as much. Yeah. I know you've mentioned that you can test blood levels quicker on cream versus injections, but what's the realistic time frame to notice benefits from test cream? So I just went into this earlier, and it's a good question because, listen, if you get enough DHT to support erections, you could have that amount of DHT in your blood. But it may not register at penile tissue for another week and a half. Might be 2 weeks. It doesn't usually take longer than that. Because as we see in the reverse end in the literature on 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, it takes weeks for it to start depositing fat cells in your penis where smooth muscle should be, and collagen cells gets deposited too, and reduce the function of smooth muscle content. So the other way around takes time too. If you're on a TRT protocol and you have ED and you switch to cream, it's going to take, at least 2 weeks, assuming you're on the right dose and getting enough DHT. If the enough DHT is 120 nanograms per deciliter and you reach that after a week of cream, but erections still aren't good, but estrogen's like reasonable, it'd probably take another week, max another 2 weeks. Because again, it has to go through an intrapenile process of local DHT vasculature optimization, which takes time. It takes time. A lot of people want to jump ship if they, go to cream and don't see noticeable improvement in erections. You must wait. You must wait. But keep the framework of high DHT, pretty controlled estrogen in your protocol no matter what. On a cypionate-based hybrid protocol with normal E2 but slightly low DHT, how do you decide between adding exogenous DHT versus test cream? Great question. On a cypionate hybrid protocol, which I assume is, cypionate as a baseline, and then you want to add cream or DHT. Normal E2, but slightly low DHT. I would use cream first in this case. Yeah, use cream. Yeah. Push cream at a click a day of the 100 milligram stuff on the scrotum, and then monitor. Again, if it's erections that are failing, it could take 2 weeks for them to start, so be patient. And then you just go look at the estrogen at the peak on labs and see how much it came up. Right? If it went up catastrophically, which is unlikely, then it would be the move to go to DHT. In other words, the answer to your question is if cream is making you aromatize too much, you move to DHT itself because it's not going to aromatize at all. In what cases can separate DHT supplementation be more useful than testosterone cream? Basically what I just described. Yeah, like when you use cream to try to increase DHT on a low dose of cypionate, which you did to get estrogen in range, but now you got lukewarm, moderately low-ish DHT. You try to use cream, and then it just, for some reason, you aromatize like a madman on it, even if it's scrotally applied. Then you just use DHT. What rack pull men is that from switching from Empower Test E to Anazo Pharmacy Test E? Total T dropped in half. Same dose? That's not good. I know you do coaching for sexual optimization. Do you offer rehab protocols? Do you mean for older guys for injuries? No. I mean, I can help you do that. I can help you figure out what that is, but it's not typically what I do. Check out True Nutrition. My provider only offers 200 milligrams test cream, not 100. Yeah, some of them are jerk offs. Just go to Defy Medical. Just go to Defy Medical. You want the fine-tune adjustment capacity. Again, the best way to dial in is not to have swings in hormones that are big. You want to have them as small as possible, right? If you're close to something, you're building a brick house. Do you want to remove 170 bricks? Oh, you built it too big. Let's remove 170. Well, now it's too small. Or do you want to remove 5 bricks? All right, that worked, but we still need to remove a little more. Remove another 5. Then you removed 15 when removing 100 at a time, it's too big of a shift. This is truly why the 100 milligram cream makes more practical sense. It can be dialed in. Yeah. Two pumps on the scrotum of that stuff with cypionate would be a good start. Yeah. In the morning. And then, run cypionate once every either 3.5 days or 7 days of 40 to 80 milligrams. It all depends on where your numbers go and stuff though, people can dial in 200 milligram cream, but the max I've seen them tolerate without over aromatizing and causing an imbalance in the DHT estrogen axis is 3 pumps in the morning. 2 and 1 usually gets them crappy energy throughout the day. They need at least 3, but that's like their borderline. And sometimes people on TRT have to be borderline everything. That below which you start feeling like crap, but there you feel really good, and erections and libido are good. Kind of an out of the box question, but some people with PFS have luck running DHT and enthates. and estrogen. Why is this different than using test? Well, it's not entirely different, because what test is doing, the only thing you're missing there is anabolism. That's all. But you're addressing the root problem by not having any substrate for aromatization and using pure DHT to take care of the erectile function and the androgen receptor mediated libido in the brain. And you're giving yourself enough estrogen, which needs to be in a zone for libido to even work. So it's not a bad strategy, but what you've done is you have simplified it to the actual core of the problem, which is good and smart, but you're missing the benefits of testosterone itself, which are anabolism, increases in metabolism, increases in strength and energy, and increases in dopamine synthesis, among other things, insulin sensitivity, stuff like that. So You've cut to the core of the problem, which will actually work for sexual function, but you'll be physically weak, if you don't have much testosterone, and DHT is going to shut down the HPTA. So you're not going to make a whole lot naturally. If you end up feeling fine, but that's not ideal. Has HP on source list been compromised? No, that guy just, sometimes goes through periods where he's overwhelmed with orders where shit takes a month to ship. Yeah. But it's not common, but on the source list, I specify like my favorite vendors where there's just never any delay or anything. It's usually PPL and AP. Hey, brothers. This crazy one pump and 200 milligrams cream 300 IU took my T to 800, DHT to 177. E261, no libido, but good clean energy. Yeah, it's potent. How are erections? You probably just need to get the E2 down to like 40, 30 or something. 30 to 40. It's just not a great ratio. That's not a great ratio. I mean, this is case in point, though. Like, you have enough DHT, but E2 is still masking sexual function. That's what it does. That's what it does. The idea that you could just scale up your DHT. First of all, high DHT comes with side effects. You can't do that, right? It can. But secondly, estrogen's always going to be a little thorn in your side there. It needs to be in a range. The ratio stuff sounds good. Oh, have enough T. As long as you have enough T, you can support any amount of estrogen. First of all, doesn't that sound a little ridiculous? Any amount of estrogen? Well, there's certainly a cutoff, right? There's got to be a threshold, right? Physiology doesn't work like that in these superlative extras. Neurochemistry doesn't work like that. What set me up to do good coaching on TRT was my background in neurochemistry, because a lot of it is very similar. You overload the brain with acetylcholine receptor agonism, and then you have compensatory reductions in cholinergic firing. There's homeostatic ranges, in other words, where everybody has to be. You start going out of those ranges backed by some funky ideology that sounds good and you think is right. People have problems. And then the perpetuators of that information wonder why. Why would they have problems? This doesn't align with like my little construct of an idea of how this is supposed to work. It's because we need to be in homeostatic ranges, dude. Your idea is wrong. Tough question. How long can it take to recomp penis after intravascular fat deposit? Unknown. Because I would never, out of responsibility, take someone and instruct them to like dose less DHT if they need it. Or like one PFS guy is dialed in right now with pretty high dose enanthate. It's not quite 200 a week, but it's close. And 0.125 milligrams of anastrozole every other day with a baseline dose of HCG, like 100 IU a day. I would never have that guy try at some point, like 6 months down the line, to reduce the enanthate dose to get less. He would get less DHT then. Seems clear that he's got a threshold of DHT below which erections don't work no matter what. So the answer to your question is unknown. And when you find what is supporting erectile quality, don't stray away from it, even if it's not supporting hair. Like if it's making your hair thin, I don't care. I love the feeling of DHT so much that I'll deal with it. Like, I'm on 2-3 because my hair was getting a little wacky on just 5 on the scrotum, but I like the feeling of 5 on the scrotum. So like, if anything, I'll change my protocol. I'll go back there and sit there for a while and my hair will I'll notice it, but then I'll get to switch back, and I'll be fine either way. How do you store dry peptide surplus? Nothing extraordinary, man. I mean, just in a cabinet. Do HCG vials need to be in the fridge even before reconstituted? No. Give us your thoughts on storage of compounds in general. I'm stock. Super chat ain't working. Well, that's okay. I think don't make it complicated. Yeah. I mean, my HCG, which comes from UGL, it sits in a box that it comes in a cabinet until it's reconstituted, after which it's in the fridge, and I time it at exactly 3 weeks, and I reconstitute another vial. Me and Vigor Steve have been over this. We're the only ones that talk about this. HCG does not last as long as the pharmaceutical companies or the clinics tell you it lasts. After 3 weeks, it's pretty much, it's not toast, but it's reduced in potency for sure. Do you still need HCG in a protocol if you have a vasectomy? I don't quite know, because if that means no matter what it means your testicles can't produce sperm, but are they still capable of producing sex hormones? Because if so, then you need the HCG. How would 70% of enanthate still be around after 2 weeks? Isn't it a 5-day half-life? Well, it's a 5 to 7 day half-life. But you're assuming that half-life means terminal life. Explore the difference between half-life and terminal life. Half-life means at that 7-day mark, 50% is supposed to be out of the system. But what I was referring to is you had been injecting enanthate for a long time prior. So there's buildup from previous injections of enanthate. You can't just look at your last injection. That assumes that the previous enanthate that you injected the week before, the week before, and the week before are out of your blood. And that's impossible. You got to look at how it compounds over the previous months of injections of enanthate. That's why you'd be at 70%. Your question assumes that singular injection you injected, it should be only 50% of enanthate in your blood at this point at the half-life period. So it factors out all the previous injections. You understand? Experiment idea. DMSO plus Arimidex. Where am I? Potentially, but it's going to go systemic. Anything you put on transdermally goes systemic. So it's going to inhibit aromatase enzymes peripherally too. I love the cream 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening. Hey, if it's working out for you, it's working out for you, man. That's great. Cream it's just really going to be TRT for people. I mean, there are people that are just so gung-ho about injections. They've been doing them forever. They'd rather just do injections. Fine, whatever. But for some people, I just think moving forward, cream is going to become much more popular. It already is super popular. A lot of guys are on cream. But moving forward, people are going to be like, yeah, for TRT, you just only use cream. I'm telling you, it is the absolute most evolved way to put it on. No, you could still do injections and make them work. I might go to injections at some point, just because of ease of use or whatever. I dialed in certain cypionate protocols. I don't love it. Probably rather use prop or enanthate, but yeah, cream is just honestly, again, cypionate, high systemic T, moderate DHT, high systemic aromatization. Cream, opposite. Mid-level systemic T, low-level aromatization, high systemic DHT. It's just perfect for sexual function. Now, you could take cypionate and dial in on energy all day long, but the sex part, which you need, is harder. What's the hardest part of fixing sexual dysfunction in my experience? Hardest part about fixing it? Probably people that respond extremely extreme to testosterone, like their peaks and troughs are so antithetical to one another. Like a guy will go on cream and peak at 900, but the trough is like 100 the next morning. So there's lack of stabilization. And in those cases, that's when cream applied twice daily works for them. Not everyone's like that. Otherwise, the hardest thing is compliance. That's the hardest thing, compliance. Even though to you guys, or to most of you probably listening, you would think, why the hell wouldn't I? Yeah, I'm paying a lot of money to hire an expert on sexual function on TRT that's dealt with, the sexual dysfunction syndromes and pure sexual dysfunction from mismatched ratios on TRT. Why wouldn't I just follow his instructions? Seems pretty obvious, right? But some people don't. That's actually the hardest part for me. I had this one guy get on board. This was probably 6 months ago, booked for 3 months. And, I read the whole situation, did the fact finding, took notes, compared it to other similar situations and figured out a plan that would work. And instead of executing that plan, the dude was like, well, no, let me not try that. Let me try a half dose of this because I want to see how this. Okay, so you want to experiment and have me for feedback? You just experimented for the last 2 years and then got fed up and brought me on. Why think you still know what to do? This is all I do. So it's shit like that is hard. Coaching for me goes really well when people will just follow my instructions. Yeah, but there are individuals out there who are so hell-bent on self-experimentation at like a rapid, acute manner that they can't just stay on one thing for 4 weeks. They have to change something. Hey, I took an AI because, I felt a little whatever. It just mucks everything up. So that's the hardest part. Not understanding time frames on how things get better or not get better. Like, can't be changing your protocol. Like, it should be intelligently thought out to the formulation point. And then you've got to give it time. And then that time in the bloods 4 weeks later will tell you if that was right. Sometimes dialing in will take you 3 months. Could take 6 months. Have you used ketoconazole shampoo for hair loss? No, I would not. It does block DHT. 2 pumps, 200 milligram cream on the scrotum gets me to 1200 total T and 60 E2. 125 DHT. Yeah, see, you should have higher DHT for that E2. Still about 20-25% body fat. Okay, so that's the problem. Well, I did say that's one of the problems. Even though it sounds so general, more body fat you have, the more aromatization expression you'll have, the more estrogen you're going to have. So if you get into the 12 to 15 range, it will be, that E2 may not go down to 30, but it's probably going to be 40 something, But in the end, like, this is why you're probably a better fit for 100 milligram cream. This is actually a perfect example of why I harp on why get the 200 milligram stuff when you can make smaller adjustments with 100 milligram cream. Because here, what are you going to do? Move it to 1.5 pumps? It's so hard to do that. You click it and you only rub half of it on? Okay, fine. Say you do that. Guess what you do to the other half? Waste it. Can't apply it the next day. It'll be dried and probably less functional. It's exposed to oxygen. What does that do to the testosterone stability? It's not smart. If I were you, I'd go to 100 milligram cream. And in that case, you would be doing 3 pumps. 3 pumps would probably get you to 800 total test, E2 in range, enough DHT, and you'd be good to go. HP just delivered an order to me after 6 months. There's a shortage of raws. Right, well, that's probably why. Might have been my selection since I use low dose Deca. He's probably back to business. Might have to catch up. Yeah, people have to remember with that source. Now, I could have removed it, but I have gotten stuff from HP for years, and it's always been fucking phenomenal and like pharma grade packaged and shit. It just looks great. But there's a lot of people that are, for whatever reason, circumventing the clinics. Therefore, these guys are busy, man. I've had people email me like regarding DHT, like it had taken a month or something. It's fucking coming from overseas. It has to go through customs, dude. Like, fucking relax and understand what you're doing. I'm currently started a cycle. Thanks for that comment, though, Jordan Unit. I'm currently starting a cycle from TRT, 600 milligrams test E, some HCG, 20 milligrams DHEA. You got daily 12.5 Aromacin. Oh, no, 12.5 Aromacin every 4th day. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, that might keep the estrogen where you need it to be. It all really depends, dude. I mean, the estrogen could probably sit a little higher because you can have loads of tests and loads of DHT, but that doesn't sound terrible. It's kind of close to what I was doing, except for I was doing 250 IU of HCG every other day. Don't quite feel dialed in. Lack of libido and drop in fullness and erection quality. Okay, so then definitely for sure now. You have to look at the bloods, but almost definitely the E2 is too high for the DHT load. If you just started it, then E2's coming up there and you probably haven't had enough time to build sufficient DHT and for DHT to act at the penile tissue for optimizing erection quality. So there's lags and stuff and this kind of crap, but at the same time, it just might be too elevated estrogen. I mean, guys go on cycle all the time and have ED. It's a trade-off you make unless you're going to go through the meticulous process of dialing in the ratios and specifically having estrogen where you need it to be on that dose of test. Usually, it doesn't really scale all that much. You might be able to get it to 40 and 45, 50 and be fine, but typically the same rules apply. You should have it at 30. And then you're going to feel fine. So, yeah, you need to dial that in. If I were you, I'd run some bloods and see where everything is. See what the aromacin's actually doing to your estradiol. At that dose of test, you might still have 80 estradiol or 60, and you bump up the aromacin frequency to every other day, every third day, and that probably solve the problem. But I don't know. You'll have to do the labs and do some assessing. Looking at protocol, what would you change straight away? Oh, that protocol? Yeah, those are the things I would do, bro. Have you ever heard or tried DHT heptanoate? No. What do you think about Anavar along with test-based for EQ? For erection quality, Anavar really doesn't, do anything for that. No. It's just not that kind of thing. Now, some people say they have like these crazy erections on Anavar, and the only thing I can really think of there is that, it's acting like DHT. To some extent, it's just metabolizes different and does different things to anabolism, like at the muscle androgen receptors. But I mean, super anabolic in the penis is a muscle. I mean, maybe it's just helping that way, dude. What vitamins can I use to lower hemoglobin and hematocrit? Naringin. It's not a vitamin, but Naringin. Naringin. It's an extract from grapefruit, but you can get it extracted in a powder and just take that. It will lower your hematocrit. But I would drink a ton of water every day and do cardio every day. Hey, Ryan, my DHT reduces on TRT from 50 naturally to 39 on test. Yeah, see, this is a problem. I don't have test cream or DHT available here. What can I try? The only thing you can do is load up on test and take an AI to control the estrogen. If you can't get cream, it's the only thing you can do. But, or get source list and get DHT. Alternatively, you could take Proviron. Yeah, 25 to 50 milligrams a day. And that's probably going to be useful. Might have to dial it in a little further, but yeah. Like even where you are right now at 39 DHT, that's low. That's like, 9 nanograms per deciliter above deficient. You could probably get by with taking some Proviron because then you'd have the DHT basically. And you could keep the test dose the same. I agree on 100 milligram cream, but because I'm in California, I have to jump through hoops with Defy. So I ordered 3 bottles, and that stuff is going to last me like 6 months. Hope so. Yeah. I got to do that with them too. Like I got to order the cream every 3.5 weeks because it takes a week and a half sometimes for their process to get it to me. It's a problem. All right, boys, I'm going to end the stream. Killer questions. I got some stuff I got to do, namely go to the gym. So I'm going to go crush that this week. Look forward to content all week as per usual. Mastering Libido and Erections on TRT is officially launched. We've sold a ton of copies because people just want a playbook. Look by your side as you're dialing in TRT. If you had the framework to dial in every ester, it would help you a lot. And you would save time and you would not only dial in if you're starting, but also fix sexual dysfunction if you have it on TRT. Right? I'm not here to give you BS. The stuff I'm discussing aside from protocols is stuff you've not heard before. If you've been listening to the gospel, it's the truth from a 7-year coach's perspective on how to dial in sexual function on TRT. You can get it right now, livecortex.com. Use the code 20 now, which should be in the comments or the description to save 20% and go from there. Also, coaching is 30% off. So 3 and 6 month packages are 30% off. If you're just spinning your wheels, just bring me on board, dude. This is all I do. Yeah, it'd be like me when I'm facing a complex problem that I'm not a specialist in. I will gladly hire someone. Help me solve this, especially if that's all they do. All right, boys, kick ass, rock on, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll talk to you guys on Monday. Monday, brothers. Peace.